Hi there! I hate it here!
I believe dignity to be overrated. I am a gamer after all, and like most gamers, I partake in my own fair share of PC gaming. Console gaming bad, am I right? With the focus set primarily on digital content nowadays, it only makes sense for PC gaming to increase in popularity to an overwhelming extent in the past few years, since this is a platform that thrives on purely digital content. Now, sure, physical game discs for PC have existed in the past, but compared to their console counterparts, these lacked a considerable amount of both consistency and charm. Couple this with the fact that most PCs don't even come with a disk drive, and now you have yourself an inconvenient piece of plastic. Now, I've already made this known, but I like physical media. In fact, I prefer it over digital media. But in this case, I have to agree that digital media is by far the best way to play games on PC. So now comes the question of how are you going to download games?
Oh, that's how!
PC game launchers, also known as humanity's worst creation ever since February 8th, 2004. These all serve the common goal of providing the player a way to download and play games on your PC. Think of it like the functionality of a console without having to actually own a console, where you can browse and purchase games, write reviews, and more. There are some launchers that excel at providing a well-made service just like this. Then there's everything else. New game launches are constantly being developed as game companies try to bypass the revenue split of selling on another storefront. Steam, for example, takes 30% of a game's total sales in exchange for selling, marketing, and providing download service for your game. Not to mention, they're easy to make and pretty non-committal. So here we are with this insanely oversaturated space of every game company thinking they are hot shit and making their own service that in the end provides nothing worthwhile. It just comes off as petty and anti-consumer, and trust me, you don't want to get the gamers angry. If I had to compare it to something, I'd probably say it is a light version of the console wars, except without any of the interesting competition you've seen from there. In other words, unnecessary. This whole idea of PC game launchers truly started with Steam. You know, the one that sells Granny Simulator? That's Steam. But it wasn't always this way. Back in 2003, Valve launched Steam as a way to control the patching process and prevent cheating for games like Counter-Strike, meaning the client lacked a real storefront, and the games that it did sell were only ones developed by Valve itself. At the time, Steam was seen as a threat to PC gaming due to requiring a constant internet connection when not many households had reliable access to one. And it was just not good, with slow speeds and a clunky interface that made it a pain to use. A far cry from the Steam we know today. But over time, the service began to improve at a slow yet steady rate. In 2004, Half-Life 2 was released exclusively on the platform and marked the shift for PC games to become digital only, where even if you bought it physically, you had to download Steam to play it. Then, in 2005, a store began to emerge as Steam finally started to sell third-party games. It was no longer a Valve game downloader or server browser. It was an actual online store, because the worst part about buying games is having to actually leave your house. Furthermore, over the next several years, a wealth of features were introduced to make it a significantly more in-depth experience. They added proper search functionality, stat tracking, friend lists, community groups, voice chat, cloud saves, user reviews, achievements, and you probably get it by now. Steam dominates the PC gaming space, and for good reason. It has clearly been polished from having nearly 20 years of development, and it's really nice having your entire PC game collection in one place. And then Epic Games entered the fray. The Epic Games Store. This was Epic's response to Steam in 2019, and was seen as a threat to Steam's long-standing success. That was a great joke, will you stay for more? Simply put, it's alright. It is still missing a large amount of quality of life features that had become standard on Steam, and only recently added ways to sort your collection or write reviews. It's a bit slow, but it's usable. Also, I can't talk about Epic without talking about how it gives away free games every week, which is a very welcome benefit. Now, I might not even play 90% of these games, but for those who do, the number of games that Epic gives away can last you a lifetime. You'll never have to buy another game again if you don't want to. It's the perk of something like the Amazon Game Service, but without paying $139 a year for faster shipping. One of Epic's major selling points to developers was how it took only 12% of the game's total sales, as opposed to Steam's 30%. And yeah, that's a clear positive. Competition in that regard is healthy. But what isn't healthy is when Epic is literally buying games out to be exclusive on their incomplete platform, and people, myself included, don't take too kindly to this. I will say though, at least some of the exclusive deals that Epic does make are ones that directly fund a certain project. In that case, kudos to them. Stadia also tried making some exclusive titles in the same vein, but speaking of unhealthy competition, let's talk about the EA app. Who asked for this? According to EA, the EA app was supposed to be an upgrade from their previous launcher Origin. And what did it add? For games, the EA app boasts a pretty large selection of over 100 games. Not every game that EA has ever published, but a decent chunk. However, if we really look at it, there isn't much in terms of variety. And on top of that, a lot of the games available aren't even that good. Now, for the games worth buying, come on, just buy it on Steam. At least there you have the majority of the library seen here and all the nice features that come with it. The only thing that the EA app can do is play games and creates a friends list. That's literally it, unless you count EA Play. This alone makes the EA app pretty worthless unless you're an EA fan that only wants to play EA games on EA platforms. But you don't even get to choose whether or not you want to use it because any online EA game makes you download it even if you bought it on a different launcher. And if you want to play this game from a different launcher, it'll force you to launch the EA app, which only then will launch the game. The same thing can be said about Ubisoft Connect with its own barebones set of features, the Rockstar launcher that only offers 9 games, and the Bethesda launcher that Now, you may be wondering, why do these launchers even exist? Well,
Money.
At one point, each of these companies, with the exception of Rockstar to my knowledge, tried to break off of Steam to sell their games exclusively on their own launcher. Yeah, this didn't work out. They all backpedaled hard and put their games back on Steam after realizing they messed up here. You see, what these companies didn't quite realize was that the reason their games were as successful as they were on PC was because they were on Steam. It's the most popular PC launcher ever. So when you take that and make it exclusive to a clearly inferior service, you are making it that much harder for new people to find and become fans of your games. If they are PC only, the only group that these launchers would appeal to would be already existing fans. Sure, you make less money off of each individual sell if you were to sell it on Steam, but that exposure is so much more valuable.
So why do these still exist?
Activision Blizzard did something similar to this with Battle.net, where for a small period of time, games like the 2019 Modern Warfare reboot and even the more recent Crash Bandicoot 4 were released exclusively on the platform before moving to Steam at a later date. But Activision Blizzard has been doing this for a while anyways, especially with games like World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, and Overwatch, which had never been brought to any other PC launcher. It also has a dedicated page for each game with news and updates, which is nice. It's better than the ones I just listed, but come on, it's easier to survive cancer than to be worse than those. Well, Xbox has their own PC launcher with the Xbox Game app, and its main purpose essentially is to have a way to play Game Pass on PC. On that end, it works quite well since Game Pass is already a fantastic service, as it has a massive variety of old games and new games, all downloadable to your system and playable offline for dirt cheap. It has a polished storefront, some light community features, and the sweet game overlay that you can enable to modify your audio mix on the fly, play music, chat with friends, record game footage, look for groups, and track achievements, which is all extremely handy. Though I do wish it didn't cut so many features from the older Xbox console companion app that could let you interact with clubs, watch streams, and more. But I can kind of see why they made this change, because the console companion app is pretty much Xbox on the PC. Itch.io is an open source indie game platform that is honestly super cool. It's the only launcher that I've talked about up to this point that has managed to carve its own niche and does something unique rather than try to compete with everything else. I don't have too much experience with the platform myself, so I'll keep this short. But from what I can see, it has a thriving community that actively posts informed discussions, regularly hosts game jams, and takes part in community devlogs. Uploading games are free, and there's a ton of free quality indie games here. It's not exactly my cup of tea, but I respect this one a ton. Then we have the game launcher launchers that will centralize your game libraries and launch those launchers as background processes.
That was a real sentence I just read.
NVIDIA GeForce will compile the games in your library that have NVIDIA support, but the one everybody talks about is GOG Galaxy, which is commonly regarded as the best, as it takes every game from every launcher and throws it into a singular interface. These include PC platforms such as Epic, Steam, Ubisoft, and EA, but even synchronized with Xbox and PlayStation. It'll even combine friend lists and achievements and offer leaderboards. It effectively fixes the entire problem of having a huge clutter of different launchers. But this problem shouldn't exist in the first place!
Alright, time to settle this once and for all. Steam! I like this one. Compared to the rest of the competition, it has by far the most games and the most features. It does have some problems though, like the revenue split, and also the fact that pretty much any game can make it onto the platform. But the pros outweigh the cons for me, so it gets an A+. Alright, the Epic Games Launcher. This is a pretty decent launcher. I would have been a bit more critical of it if it was 3 years ago, but since then it has added a lot of good features that has made it a bit more usable as a platform. Also, free games. Next up, Amazon Games. I don't have a lot to say about this because it can only play free games that you get from Amazon Prime. And so if you don't have Amazon Prime, it's pretty useless. And if you do, I'm sorry. EA, everyone's favorite punching bag. It's not necessarily the worst, but it lacks so much variety and so many features that make the first two so effective that I can't give it anything higher than a D. Ubisoft, it gets the same score. For Rockstar, I'll give it 3 question marks for my utter confusion why this launcher exists. Now we have Battle.net. This one has been around for quite a while, as this was one of the primary ways, and still is the primary way, to play Activision Blizzard games on your PC. But it's still quite bare bones, so for that, it just gets a D. Xbox's launcher is pretty well made. It has so much variety with its games and also provides Game Pass, which I think makes it a completely viable way to play your games on PC. It could be better, but don't we tell that to ourselves all the time? Now when it comes to itch.io, this is a really cool platform, but I'd be lying if I said I had a ton of experience with it. But for one thing, it does give its own unique reason to exist. It doesn't really compete with any of the other launchers, and that's why I'll give it a neat. For neat. Finally, we arrive at the game launcher launchers. NVIDIA GeForce. Please don't use this to launch your games. GOG Galaxy, or what the cool kids like to say, GOG Galaxy, is a pretty great platform with the fact that it compiles all of these launchers into one singular place. And that's why it gets an A with an asterisk. Now you will be asking, why the asterisk? Well, that's because even though it is a pretty good platform and with its own storefront, it can stand on its own as its own launcher. The main reason why most people will want to use this is to compile all of their collection into one singular place. In other words, fixing a problem that shouldn't exist in the first place. Alright, and that should be... Oh, how did you get there? Alright, and to wrap things up, maybe physical media was right after all.